All right, we're in Deuteronomy Chapter 2, and we're going to pick it up in verse 26. And I sent messengers from the wilderness of Kedemoth to Sihon, king of Heshbon, with words of peace, saying, Let me pass through your land. I will keep strictly to the road, and I will turn neither to the right nor to the left. You shall sell me food for money that I may eat, and give me water for money that I may drink. Only let me pass through on foot. Just as the descendants of Esau who dwell in Seir and the Moabites who dwell in Ar did for me, until I crossed the Jordan to the land which the Lord your God is giving us, which Yehovah your God is giving us. But Sihon, king of Heshbon, would not let us pass through, for Yehovah your God hardened his spirit and made his heart obstinate, that he might deliver him into your hand, as it is this day. And Yehovah said to me, See, I have begun to give Sihon and his land over to you. Begin to possess it, that you may inherit his land. Then Sihon and all his people came out against us to fight at Yahaz. And Yehovah our God delivered him over to us. So we defeated him, his sons, and all his people. We took all his cities at that time, and we utterly destroyed the men, women, and little ones of every city. We left none remaining. We took only the livestock as a plunder for ourselves, with the spoil of the cities which we took. From Aroer, which is on the bank of the river Arnon, and from the city that is in the ravine as far as Gilead. There was not one city too strong for us. Yehovah our God delivered all to us. Only you did not go near the land of the people of Ammon, anywhere along the river Jabbok, or the cities of the mountains, or wherever Yehovah our God had forbidden us. Then we turned and went up the road to Bashan. And Og, king of Bashan, came out against us, he and all his people, to battle at Edrei. And Yehovah said to me, Do not fear him, for I have delivered him and all his people and his land into your hand. You shall do to him as you did to Sihon, king of the Amorites, who dwelt at Heshbon. So Yehovah our God also delivered into our hands Og, king of Bashan, with all his people. And we attacked him until we had no survivors remaining. And we took all his cities at that time. There was not a city which we did not take from them. 60 cities, all the regions of Argob, the kingdom of Og in Bashan. All these cities were fortified with high walls, gates, and bars, besides a great many rural towns. And we utterly destroyed them, as we did to Sihon, king of Heshbon, utterly destroying the men, women, and children of every city. But all the livestock and the spoil of the cities we took as booty for ourselves. And at that time we took the land from the hand of the 2 kings of the Amorites who were on this side of the Jordan, from the river Arnon to Mount Hermon. The Sidonians call Hermon Syrian, and the Amorites call it Senir. All the cities of the plain, all Gilead, and all Bashan, as far as Salcah and Edrei, cities of the kingdom of Og of Bashan. For only Og, king of Bashan, remained of the remnant of the giants. Indeed, his bedstead was an iron bedstead. Is it not in Rabbah of the people of Ammon? 9 cubits is its length, and 4 cubits its width, according to the standard cubit. You guys remember how big that is?
About 18 inches.
Right. Right. So you got a 13.5-foot bed, because he was so tall. And you had a 6-foot width.
King size.
That was really king size, huh? Yeah, they're cheating us now, calling it king size.
Yeah, well, I don't think they sell those kinds of mattresses anymore.
I don't think they sold them back then either. But you're exactly right. I don't think they sell mattresses that size. But you know what? I wonder what somebody like Shaquille O'Neal sleeps on. I highly doubt he's got 2 feet of his legs hanging off his bed. So my guess is he's got custom beds made, and it wouldn't surprise me if he had a 10-foot long bed made for him. That wouldn't surprise me at all.
He probably has like 4 mattresses.
And this guy's still 3 feet longer.
Yeah, this guy's still right. He's how tall was he? And then he doesn't say. Just says how big his bed is.
Just that he's a giant.
Yeah. So it just makes you wonder, these big guys, they probably make special beds, because otherwise, how do you sleep, for crying out loud?
On the floor?
Okay, chapter 3, verse 12. And this land, which we possessed at that time from Arar, which is by the river Arnon, and half the mountains of Gilead and its cities, I gave to the Reubenites and the Gadites. The rest of Gilead and all Bashan, the king of Og, I gave to the half-tribe of Manasseh. All the region of Argob, with all Bashan, was called the land of the giants. Jair, the son of Manasseh, took all the region of Argob, as far as the border of the Geshurites and the Maacathites, and called Bashan after his own name, Havoth Jair, to this day. Also I gave Gilead to Machir, and to the Reubenites and the Gadites I gave from Gilead as far as the river Arnon, the middle of the river as the border, as far as the river Jabbok, a border of the people of Ammon. The plain also, with the Jordan as the border, from Chinnereth as far as the east side of the sea of Arabah, the salt sea, below the slopes of Pisgah. Then I commanded you at that time, saying, Yehovah your God has given you this land to possess. All you men of valor shall cross over armed before your brethren, the children of Israel. But your wives, your little ones, and your livestock, I know that you have much livestock, shall stay in your cities which I have given you, until Yehovah has given rest to your brethren as to you. And they also possess the land which Yehovah your God is giving them beyond the Jordan. Then each of you may return to his possession which I have given you. And I commanded Joshua at that time, saying, Your eyes have seen all that Yehovah your God has done to these two kings. So will Yehovah do to the kingdoms through which you pass. You must not fear them, for Yehovah your God himself fights for you. Then I pleaded with Yehovah at that time, saying, O Lord God, you have begun to show your servant your greatness and your mighty hand. For what God is there in heaven or on earth who can do anything like your works and your mighty deeds? I pray, let me cross over and see the good land beyond the Jordan, those pleasant mountains and Lebanon. But Yehovah was angry with me on your account and would not listen to me. So Yehovah said to me, Enough of that. Speak no more to me of this matter. Go up to the top of Pisgah and lift your eyes toward the west, the north, the south, and the east. Behold it with your eyes, for you shall not cross over this Jordan. But command Joshua and encourage him and strengthen him, for he shall go over before this people, and he shall cause them to inherit the land which you will see. So we stayed in the valley opposite Beth Peor. Interesting. The commission of Moses at this time, what does he want more than anything at this point, apart from being in the presence of the Lord?
He wants to go into the promised land.
He wants to go into the promised land. And here the Lord says, stop asking the question. You can go look at it, but you can't go in. But you have a job to do. And that is, Joshua, who is going to take him in, your job is to go encourage him, to tell him to have faith in me, the very one who's not allowing you to go in. You need to tell him to trust me. You need to tell him to be encouraged by my presence. You need to tell him my promises. You need to remind him of what I've done. And you need to encourage him to faithfully execute the office of the calling that I've put upon him. In our American culture, that's almost unheard of, where somebody who is being removed from office, who is being forbidden from having what they want, would actually follow through and do the will of the Lord and be what the Lord wants them to be anyway. It's almost, I didn't say it's unheard of, it's almost unheard of, and that's very unfortunate. But you see, this is what the Lord expects of us all. Because just as we don't get to already be able to say, Jesus has returned, we are here at this point to be living our lives as if he not only could come at any time, but knowing that we may live through the end of our terrestrial lives, having to prepare others to be living that very same way. And he still has not returned yet. He still has not eliminated our enemies. He still not has wiped out all suffering. And so we still get to go through all of that while he says, No, I'm not going to take you out of it. I'm going to leave you there. And your job along the way is to do what? Encourage others to follow me. Encourage others to trust me. Encourage others to believe in me. Encourage others to know me. Remind them of what I've done. Tell them why they can trust me and how you know that they can trust me and how he or she would individually know he or she can trust me. This is really important for us to remember, because we, like Moses, don't get to have exactly what we want by going to the Lord and saying, you know what, Lord, here's my list. Bing, 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 bing. His job is not to be our genie and grant us our wishes. Our job, even though we do make those requests, is to accept his answer as given and continue to trust him, even if it's not what we had originally asked him for. That's our job. And those who do that are the ones who are counted faithful to him. We're going to read part of chapter 4 here, and then we're going to wrap up. So then he says, now, O Israel, listen to the statutes and the judgments which I teach you to observe, that you may live and go in and possess the land which Jehovah, God of your fathers, is giving you. You shall not add to the word which I command you, nor take from it, that you may keep the commandments of Jehovah your God which I command you. That's not a new subject when we get to the New Testament. It's been a constant from the beginning. Your eyes have seen what Jehovah did at Baal Peor. For Jehovah your God has destroyed from among you all the men who followed Baal Peor. So given the character, Alex, as you pointed out, of God, knowing his character, if he destroyed the men in times past who followed false gods, what will he do to the people at any time, now or in the future?
So they may not suffer the same type of control and how it was clear to everybody, but they're still going to suffer the same destruction.
They're going to suffer the same destruction. You know, it's an interesting thing. You said they may not suffer the same immediate destruction. You know why we call it that?
So it's what we see.
No, it's because we can read through the text so quickly. Remember, he's describing 40 years of purging those people.
Well, and it was very clear as to why they were dying. He came out and said, you're going to die because of this.
Right.
And then they did. And people nowadays don't hear that. It's not said about them specifically, they think. And
right.
They live their life and die, and nobody goes, oh, they died because the Lord was against them. They go, no, they were still good people.
But even in the description, as you were just saying that, the Lord said, if you do this, you're going to die. They did it, and then they died. We say it like that, so it makes it sound like the time is so compressed together. But the reality is they did these things, and it may have taken many decades for these people to have actually died. And what does the Lord then claim about them? I destroyed them. So just because they didn't die that day or the next day, however some did in fact die immediately, many of them it took 38 years to die for God to purge them from the community for whatever reasons he has.
That's probably the most miserable 38 years of their lives.
Actually, some people probably thought, hey, you know what, I'm still alive. God changed his mind. I have no doubt that people thought that. Or there are others who thought, I didn't get hit by the lightning. Maybe God doesn't exist. Despite the fact there's a pillar of cloud by day and a pillar of fire by night. You see, people get all sorts of stupid ideas in their heads. And they take matters into their own hands. Precisely because God doesn't strike them dead in the moment. As a matter of fact, that's something that he specifically states elsewhere in his scripture, that the reason people continue sinning is because he doesn't destroy them immediately. And so that makes them think it's okay, and they continue doing it. What they're refusing all along the way is his call for them to humble themselves and repent and turn to him. That's what's going on for that length of time. And it's his long suffering with them that gives them that extended time, but it was never his permission to keep sinning. And that's the point that he makes. And even if it was the person that died the day of, or the person that died 38 years later, the Lord's declaration is, it happened because I said so, and my word will always come true. Even if they forgot about it, I never forgot about it. That's what he's talking about. Verse 4. But you held fast to Yehovah your God and are alive today, every one of you. Why are the people there able to listen to what Moses is telling them?
Because they held fast.
Because they held fast. This group of people at this point is the group of people that were listening to the Lord. And what does it mean to hold fast? Sydney, you have any idea? You don't have any idea what it means to hold fast? Okay. So I'm going to see if I can give you a demonstration. Pick up your pen. I want you to hold fast to your pen. Why didn't you let it go?
Because he told me not to.
You know I didn't. I told you to hold fast to it. You obviously did know what it meant. Otherwise, no, I said hold fast to your pen while I take it away from you. And you just gripped it really tightly.
Please.
That's what I said. Feel like we can stop the recording? Feel like we can stop the recording and replay it for you?
No.
Yeah. So the point is, you do know what hold fast means when it comes to holding fast to your pen. What does it mean when it's in regard to your pen?
You're going to take it away? Is there any?
No, if I say to you, hold fast to your pen, what does that mean to you?
To hold on to it?
Loosely, tightly, how?
Tightly.
Yeah. So that no one can do what?
Take it away?
Right. So to hold fast to your pen means to grip it really, really tight so no one can take it away from you. So what do you think the Lord means when he says, hold fast to my word?
Hold on to it and let no one be able to take it away from you.
And so how do we demonstrate that we're holding on to the Lord's word so that no one, and when we say no one, we mean no one. Not dad, not mom, not brother, not sister, not wife, not husband, not uncle, not aunt, not grandma, not grandpa. No one can take it away from you. What does he mean?
By reading the word
And
instructions.
what's that?
Following it.
And following his instructions. That's exactly what he's talking about. By listening to his word and following his instructions. That's precisely what he means. If you do that, what does he say will happen? But you who held fast to Yehovah your God are what? Are alive today. What is he saying this is a matter of? Ice cream sundaes out of chocolate and vanilla, or life and death?
Life and death.
Yeah. He's making it very clear that the reason you will live is because you were care at all about listening to me and following what I say. Everyone else who didn't do that, I killed him. I destroyed him. That's what he's telling them right now. That's the very message he's giving them. And so he's saying, no matter who else is out there, if you don't listen to me first and follow my instructions, the consequences are you're going to die. And no one can help you with that, except you making a different decision. And that decision will have to become, I will listen to you, and I will follow you, and then I'll live. That's what he's telling them right now. Very fundamental principle, and that principle will never change ever for eternity. Has no chance of changing. And so this is really important because we're going to be in circles with all sorts of people, whether it's, as I said, there's these family relatives, it could be dad or mom or grandpa, grandma, brother, sister, whoever. But then in your case, you go to school, you have teachers. In my case, I go to work, I have a boss. And they're going to tell us things. At what time should any of those people take place ahead of God and what he says? The answer is never. And it doesn't matter who they are. He's saying, the people who put anyone else ahead of me and listen to anyone else, I wiped them all out. The only ones that are here, you guys that are able to listen to this message, it's because you were concerned with, you valued listening to me and doing what I told you. That's why you're alive. It's no different than if we were in a dangerous situation where if you pick option A, you're going to die, and you pick option B, you're going to live. And I say, hey, Taylor, come with me and let's go down path number B. And Taylor says, no, I want to go down path number A. What's going to happen? I'm going to live and she's going to die. It's not because I didn't tell her the truth. It's because she didn't listen to it. The same thing can happen where Taylor and I are together and we know path B is we live, we don't fall off the cliff. Path A, we fall off the cliff and die. And I say, ooh, that looks really cool. I'm going to try it. And Taylor says, not me. I'm going on path B. You go path A if you want. Now I'm going to die, and she's going to live. You see, knowing the truth and following God's truth is the key. And without that, we perish. Verse 5, surely I have taught you statutes and judgments, just as Jehovah my God commanded me, that you should act according to them in the land which you go to possess. Therefore, be casual and unobservant of them, for it doesn't matter what you do. Isn't that how people read their Bibles? That's not English. That's new. That's the new Make It Up As I Go version. Therefore, be careful to observe them, for this is your wisdom and your understanding in the sight of the peoples who will hear all these statutes and say, surely this great nation is a wise and understanding people. For what great nation is there that has God so near to it as Jehovah our God is to us? For whatever reason we may call upon him. In other words, these people are supposed to look on the nation of Israel and say, they have a very specific way and manner about them. What other people are like that? And what other people has one God that's so close to them and treats them with such care and such attention? No other nation has that. First of all, no other nation only had one God. And second of all, no other nation had a God that was personal with them, that was involved in their lives, that gave them instructions they knew how to follow and could execute, and that would protect them and go before them and defend them against the attacks of their enemies. That was unheard of. Still is unheard of apart from the one true and living God. And what great nation is there that has such statutes and righteous judgments as are in this law which I set before you today? How would the other nations be able to even ask that question?
They'd have to hear all those statutes.
They'd have to hear about them, right? How would they possibly hear about them? The people of Israel would have to communicate them to these nations. You follow? The only way they discover the existence of the statutes and judgments of Jehovah are the people of Jehovah to communicate his existence and what his statutes and judgments are. Otherwise, the other people aren't going to know. So the interactivity of these nations together was to be such that there is only one God. He is Jehovah, and here are his requirements. The creator of life tells you these are his requirements for you to have life. And if you want to live, this is the key. If you don't care, you're going to perish. And maybe even at our hand, because he may instruct us to put you to death. Verse 9, only take heed to yourself and diligently keep yourself, lest you forget the things your eyes have seen, and lest they depart from your heart all the days of your life, and teach them to your children and your grandchildren. Very carefully, very directly, and very distinctly, he makes it very clear. How you start is a good thing. How you finish is a better thing. No matter how you start, if you don't finish well, you have no hope. And number 2, part of the fundamental responsibilities, the very base responsibilities, are that we are to teach them to our children and our grandchildren. And it is not optional. Verse 10, especially concerning the day he stood before Yehovah your God in Horeb, when Yehovah said to me, gather the people to me, and I will let them hear my words, that they may learn to fear me all the days they live on the earth, and that they may teach their children. He's repeated those themes twice now in a very short span of commentary. Important point number 1, we got to take them into our own heart first. Important point number 2, we are under obligation, not option, to teach them to our children and grandchildren. The very essence of refusing to teach to our children and our grandchildren the word of the Lord is the evidence that we haven't taken his word into our heart to start with. That's why he's coupling them together so tightly. Then you came near and stood at the foot of the mountain. And the mountain burned with fire to the midst of heaven, with darkness, cloud, and thick darkness. And Yehovah spoke to you out of the midst of the fire. You heard the sound of the words, but saw no form. You only heard a voice. So he declared to you his covenant, which he commanded you to perform, the 10 commandments, and he wrote them unto tablets of stone. And Yehovah commanded me at that time to teach you statutes and judgments, that you might observe them in the land which you cross over to possess. Take careful heed to yourselves, for you saw no form when Yehovah spoke to you at Horeb out of the midst of the fire, lest you act corruptly and make for yourselves a carved image in the form of any figure, the likeness of male or female, the likeness of any animal that is on the earth, or the likeness of any winged bird that flies in the air, the likeness of anything that creeps on the ground, or the likeness of any fish that is in the water beneath the earth. And take heed, lest you lift your eyes to heaven, and when you see the sun, the moon, and the stars, all the hosts of heaven, you feel driven to worship them and serve them, which Yehovah your God has given to all the peoples under the whole heaven as a heritage. But Yehovah has taken you and brought you out of the iron furnace, out of Egypt, to be his people, an inheritance, as you are this day. Furthermore, Yehovah was angry with me for your sakes, and swore that I would not cross over the Jordan, and that I would not enter the good land which Yehovah your God is giving you as an inheritance. But I must die in this land. I must not cross over the Jordan. But you shall cross over and possess that good land. Take heed to yourselves, lest you forget the covenant of Yehovah your God, which he made with you, and make for yourselves a carved image in the form of anything which Yehovah your God has forbidden you. For Yehovah your God is a consuming fire, a jealous God. When you beget children and grandchildren and have grown old in the land, and act corruptly and make the carved image in the form of anything, and do evil in the sight of Yehovah your God to provoke him to anger, I call heaven and earth to witness against you this day, that you will soon utterly perish from the land when you cross over the Jordan to possess, which you cross over the Jordan to possess. You will not prolong your days in it, but will be utterly destroyed. I'm going to pause there for a minute. The word prolong also means to live long. If I told you, Howie, if I said, you cannot stay long in this building, what does that mean?
That means eventually I'll have to get out.
So before you get out, where would you have to be if I said you can't stay long in the building?
Say I'm going to a course and say how long do I have to stay out?
Where physically?
Where physically would you be for me to say to you, you can't stay long in this building?
I guess I'm not understanding.
So here's the question. If I say to you, you can't continue to wear that blue shirt, does that indicate you're already wearing the shirt or that you're never wearing it to begin with?
I was already wearing the blue shirt.
By saying you can't continue to wear it, right? It means you have to take it off. The only way you can do that is to have already been wearing it, right? So if I say you cannot remain in the building, where do you have to be in order for that to be effective for you?
Outside of the building.
No, you actually only have to be in the building. Because if you were outside the building, why would I say to you, you can't remain in the building? You're not in the building. I would instead say, don't go in the building, right?
Yeah.
So for me to say you can't remain in the building means you're already physically present in the building. That's why language is so important, because it actually has meaning to communicate a point. And if we pay attention to what the language says, we can understand the communication. If I say, stop that, does it mean you're already doing it or you're not yet doing it?
You're already doing it.
Correct. Otherwise, there's nothing to stop, right? But if I say, don't do that, now, does that indicate if you're doing it or not yet?
Yeah.
I could use that statement in either case. You could already be doing it, or you could not be doing it, right? And it would apply in both cases. But if I said to you, don't start doing that, now, does that indicate whether you already have been doing it or not?
It does.
It does, because I used extra words like start. And when I use those words, it communicates a message, right? That's what language is for, is to communicate a message so that we can understand one another. And so if the Lord says, when you grow old, if you start doing the things I don't want you to do, I will cut your days off, and you will not prolong or continue in the land that I'm giving you. What is he telling you then?
He's telling you that if you go into that land and when you grow old and you forget the covenant and you stop and you start doing stuff that you shouldn't be doing, then he's going to kill you.
That's exactly correct. And remove you from that land of blessing that he had given to you. You agree with that, Sydney?
Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly what he's telling us. And so that's a warning to those who have done well up to now and are being rewarded by God at this time in their lives, to remember you have to stay on that track in order to continue to receive his rewards and his blessings. Because if we abandon him, he says, I'm not going to prolong your days there. I'm going to kick you out. I'm going to destroy you. And that's why he says, you will not prolong your days or live long in it, but will be utterly destroyed. What does utterly destroyed mean? What's the adverb utterly trying to express? Completely, right. Not one tidbit left. It's not like we got a slap on the wrist and the rest of us still gets to go in. No. Utterly or completely destroyed means no fractional part of you, physical, spiritual, or otherwise, is going to make it.
Yeah, when you take in the next verse, with
Yep.
that in context then, the utter destruction is to individuals, not to the group, right?
It is, well,
Because it's
no.
taken as a way of he's utterly destroying the Israelites and there's none of them left.
So the answer to the question is, it can be both.
But in this context, it seems he's talking to those individuals who are doing evil. They are utterly destroyed.
In this context, the language is very clear. He's talking to each person one at a time. He said the reason you're alive is because you paid attention. And the way for you to live is to continue to pay attention. And if you don't continue to pay attention, I'm going to utterly destroy you. And nowhere in here is the language geared toward a nation. However, elsewhere he does talk about this as the people of Israel as a whole, and in fact does take action against the nation Israel, because he had birthed them as a nation with a purpose. And so they exist as a nation with a purpose. When the nation becomes so corrupt that they don't continue their purpose, he can wipe out the nation and still preserve the remnant of those who are faithful to him.
He says that in the very next verse, actually.
Yeah. Well, then let's continue to read on and have him clarify that for us. And Yehovah will scatter you among the peoples, and you will be left few in number among the nations where Yehovah will drive you. So that's exactly what he's saying there, is I'm going to then take apart the nation that I put together. You will no longer be a favored nation, and the only people that will be left are the people that I choose to have remain alive.
I think back towards that utter destruction, to a point you made earlier of it's not just, well, you've done bad, and so I'm going to cause you to die, and then you come to heaven, because I still want you to be with me. He does want you to be with me, but an utter destruction, that there's no way to argue that means, you just physically died, but then you still went to live with the Lord.
Right.
You individually are utterly destroyed.
Right. Yeah.
Because people do argue that still.
Sure, they still argue it.
Just killing them so they could stop being evil and go live with them.
Yeah, and obviously that's nonsense. It's not supported anywhere in Scripture by any intimation or application of practice or instruction by any stretch. Verse 28, and there you will serve gods, the works of men's hands, wood and stone, which neither see nor hear nor eat nor smell. But from there you will seek Yehovah your God, and you will find him if you seek him with all your heart and with all your soul. How do we find Yehovah? Is that just us, or is that everybody? Is that, well, it doesn't have to be the people who call themselves Christians, because...
We have to diligently seek him, as it states elsewhere. Right.
And with how much of our heart?
Full and humble.
And how much of our soul?
All.
You see, there's no room in here for compartmentalizing. God doesn't allow it. There's no room for having a segregation of our spiritual lives and our family lives and our social lives and our work lives and having all these compartments in our lives. He says, nope. He says, only if you seek him with all your heart and with all your soul are you going to receive him and the blessings that come with his presence. It's the only way it happens. When you are in distress, and all these things come upon you in the latter days, when you turn to Yehovah your God and obey his voice, for Yehovah your God is a merciful God, he will not forsake you nor destroy you, nor forget the covenant of your fathers which he swore to them. What's the condition for these people to experience the mercy of God to start with? Not what Josh did, right? That would be a good answer. Not what Josh is doing, you mean.
Turn to him and obey him.
So before we get to the answer, with your answer, that's step 2. The first step is they would have to have been separated from him to start from. Okay? You can't accept or experience the mercy of God by always having been his and always having been with him. If you have never had the chance or the choice to say no and have said no to God and departed from him, there's no place for mercy in your life. Who do we know absolutely certainly never had to experience in human form the mercy of God? Jesus. Because he was sinless and therefore by definition would have never been a candidate for God's mercy. Very simple. The only way the candidate for mercy even exists is because you deserve punishment. You deserve what he talked about earlier. But what did you do when you realized that you deserved that? You then did exactly what you just said, Howard. The second part of that is you humble yourself and you turn to him. And you say, I've been wrong. And I need help. And I give myself to you and I hope you'll help me. And God says, then He extends you mercy at that point. Because you can't earn that forgiveness. It's mercifully granted. And He also says, He won't cast you off or destroy you if that's how you turn to Him. What are the two components that must exist that God knows even better than we do about the sincerity of them that He says qualify us for His mercy?
Condition of our heart, condition of our soul.
No, that's one. So it's not the condition of our heart and soul. He says, Taylor's answer was?
Turn and obey.
To turn to Him. That was Howard's answer. But the second part is, we have to be predisposed, predetermined in our own hearts and minds, no matter what, I will obey God. If we think we turn to God and say, gee, God, I'm sorry, and we don't purpose to obey Him, He's not going to accept us. He already knows that that's our heart and our soul. So to turn with Him with all our heart and all our soul is not only the humility of the admission and confession, but it includes the commitment to listen to and follow Him, obeying Him no matter what. If those aren't connected together, there's no mercy from God. The one who just wants Him to give them forgiveness without any commitment from them back to Him does not receive His mercy. That's what his point here is. So these are the conditions of what it means to turn to Him with all our heart and all our soul. We have to turn, instead of being away from Him, now it's toward Him, and committed to listening to and obeying Him.
So you're saying these verses aren't only just applying to confession and repentance and the continued following, but also the just continuation of following Him.
Continuation of following Him, because
I thought that's what it was saying, but then you were saying it was about forgiveness, and so I was like, wait, I'm confused here. But you're saying it's both of them. It can be applied both equally.
correct, both equally. They both have to be concomitantly present at the moment, and concomitantly or with equal force, with equal seriousness from the person, continued every day for the rest of eternity. That's the point he's making.
Well, if you look at verse 29, it starts off, the previous verse was talking about how you'll be driven off into the other nations and you'll serve other gods.
Right.
And then verse 29 starts off,
But
from there you will seek the Lord your God.
right, so from that place
You have to be lost.
you have to be lost. So now you have to have the intention of turning back to God and purposing to be obedient to Him for the rest of eternity. Not just obedient in this one circumstance. Okay, I'll obey you this time. He says, if that's your whole commitment, forget it. No. The obedience has to be committed to in your own heart and mind as a permanent condition of my life in order to be granted God's mercy. And there are people who, in fact, make that commitment and then go along for a while, and according to Jesus, through either persecution or cares of the world, or the deceitfulness of riches, temptations of the devil, get drawn away and they abandon that commitment. That happens. And if God is going to be merciful to them, what must they do again? Humble themselves, realizing that they have departed from God. The fact that He still preserved them gives them hope that they can receive God's mercy. And they turn back to Him and say, you know, God, I did it again and I'm sorry. I don't want to be that person, and I'm committed to following you. And He may or may not take them. But if He does, we should be very careful not to depart from Him again. Yes, sir.
I'm pretty sure there are some exceptions for the mercy rule.
Exceptions for the mercy rule in what way you mean?
Like, if somebody decided to kill everybody in this room, I don't think God would probably forgive them.
Well, that person, it's already been defined by God. If that person came in as a murderer and wiped us all out, God's already said there will be no mercy for that person. So that's not a person who has the capacity to be led by the Spirit of God to humble themselves and truly give their whole heart and whole soul to Him by the definition that God gives. Because the only way somebody does that is by partnering with the Holy Spirit to get there. Otherwise, nobody gets there. Okay?
That's what he's saying.
Yeah. And so you're right, God would not grant them the opportunity because He wouldn't send His Spirit to help them with that. And without His Spirit to help you with that, you're not going to get there. Okay, so that person would be forbidden the necessary provision of God to be able to get that mercy, and you're correct. So there are certain conditions, you're exactly correct, that somebody is not eligible for mercy, but in this particular case, he's talking to people who are eligible by his definition and what they have to do in order to qualify. Does that make sense? Okay.
Kind of once you know about that process, it almost makes it less likely that you'll be able to go through it. Not that it's impossible, but you get into that idea of licentiousness.
Right.
Thinking, I can go ahead and do this, and then if I come and humble myself, God will forgive me. But I have a license to go and sin.
Right.
And then you make yourself ineligible for that mercy.
Right. What does God call that in His Word? What you're describing right now, what does He call that in His Word?
Well, aside from the word licentiousness, hypocrisy.
Well, no, that's somebody saying one thing and doing another. Intentional is one of the words that we use. In fact, in the Scriptures, there's another word that's called presumptuous. That's the person who presumes, if I do this now, and I get the joy out of doing it, whatever that happens to be, then when it's all over with, then I'll go to God and say, yep, I'm sorry, and He'll forgive me. That's what God calls presumptuous sin, and He says, no forgiveness for you. That's what God says. If that's your mind, not happening. That's what He means by presumptuous sin. Now, either one of those two people, God can have remain alive, and He can bring that person to the end of him or herself and get them to come to a real point of giving all their heart and soul to Him, and He could grant them mercy. But in the state of presumptuous sin or intentional sin, not happening. They have to depart from that state and turn to God. So you have to turn away from presumptuousness and intentionality of sin back unto the Lord with all your heart and all your soul, and a firm commitment to be listening to and following Him for that mercy to be yours. The other side doesn't make it. The people who think they can continue to sin and just keep confessing it and God will forgive them, that's a fantasy that's been made up by men that doesn't exist. Okay? Verse 32. For ask now concerning the days that are past, which were before you, since the day that God created man on earth, and ask from one end of heaven to the other, whether any great thing like this has happened, or anything like it has been heard. Did any people ever hear the voice of God speaking out of the midst of the fire, as you have heard and live? Or did God ever try to go and take for Himself a nation from the midst of another nation, by trials, by signs, by wonders, by war, by a mighty hand and an outstretched arm, and by great terrors, according to all that Jehovah your God did for you in Egypt before your eyes? To you it was shown, that you might know that Jehovah Himself is God, and there is no other besides Him. Why would that statement be valuable to us? That He's God and there's no other besides Him. Why would that be a particularly valuable statement for God to make very clear and for us to realize the truth of? So we have no excuse. Ultimately, it produces a position of having no excuse, but why do you think he would communicate that message to us?
So we know we have nowhere else to go.
So not only do we know we have nowhere else to go, but think about the pressures in life. Howie, you're the youngest in the room. How many different people are you told in your life that you have to obey? Just think about it for half a second. You got your dad and Mary, right? Jack and your mom. How many teachers do you have at school?
4.
4 teachers. So now we're up to 9 people. And the policemen and the firemen and all the other things that are supposed to be authorities in your life, the numbers just keep going on and on and on, right? Okay, so you got all these people. Do they all say the same thing? Do they all give you the same message? No. There's lots of messages mixed on all those people, right? Is what they're going to tell you. And some of them directly contradict each other, don't they? In other words, somebody's not saying, for example, your mom says, eat your veggies, and your dad says, no, you don't have to eat your veggies, ignore your mom. I'm not asking you that question. What I'm asking you is, you have some people telling you, Howie, this is important as a young man. And other people say, it doesn't matter. Right? Yeah. You have some people telling you, it's important to do your homework from school, right? Sure, your dad tells you, Howie, get your homework done, right? There's probably other people in your life that don't care and don't hardly even talk to you about it, right?
Yeah, well, I don't actually know anybody who would say no to it.
Would say no to it? Well, no, if you asked them.
No, I mean, would not tell me to do my homework.
Right, so if you had a conversation with somebody, they would probably say, sure, you need to do your homework, right? But you have some people who step up and say, Howard, did you do your homework today? And if you did, let me see it. I want to see what your work is, right? And was your work okay or was it not okay? You have other people that simply say, Howard, did you do your homework today? And you go, yep, I did. And they go, okay, great, thanks. And they don't check, right? Then you have other people that don't even ask the question if you did the homework. They just assume you know that you're supposed to do it, right?
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
And so you've got that whole group of people. Which one are you going to follow? How do you decide?
Honestly, I really don't know.
That's why this statement's so important. When you remember there's only one God, and you're going to have to answer to Him, that helps you choose which group of those 3 people are the most important to listen to. How would you know which one of those groups is most important to listen to? One that follows the God that exists. The only God that exists. Whoever's following Him, they're the ones I'm going to listen to. If they're not following Him, why would you listen to them? So now we have our 3 groups. Back to our 3 groups. The first group is the group that's listening to and following God. The second group hears Him but don't really care what He has to say and don't follow Him. The third group, they don't listen or follow Him. Which group are you going to listen to and why?
The first one, because that's the one that's most likely going to end up like them.
The first one, because the qualification of the first group is the one who is listening to the only one God that exists, and they're doing what He says, and by God's definition, those people are going to live or die.
Live.
Right. Group 2, are those people going to live or die? They hear Him, but they don't do it. What do you mean probably? What has God just said? They're going to utterly perish. What about the third group? Are they going to live or die? They're going to die. Which group do you want to be in, Howie? The one that lives. So what's the secret to being in group 1? What's the formula? Yeah. And when you do that, group 1 is going to be the one you're going to follow. Because what are they also doing? Talking to God and following His instructions, right? That's how you know. That's how you decide. Now, what if there were 100 different gods? How would you know which group to follow? Group 1 says we're following God number 1. Group 2 says we're following God number 2. Group 3 says we're following God number 3. How would you choose?
So if I didn't know any better, then probably I would say the one that has most evidence that it is.
If there was evidence. Right? If there was evidence. The problem is, most of these other gods, there's no real evidence of anything. These are just people trying to convince you that what they're saying is true. One of the reasons it's such a good thing to know there's only one God is, these three groups can't all be right. Because they all don't say the same thing. They can all be wrong, but no more than one of them could be right. Because not any one of the three say the same thing as the other two. So when you know there's only one God, and He makes it easy to know Him, and listen to Him and follow Him, then it makes sense that you can then find the evidence as to which one is doing what. That's right. Makes it simple to know which one's telling the truth and know what to do, right? Then you get to choose. And what are we supposed to choose if we want to live, Sydney?
To follow and obey God.
Simple. So if you are going to choose to live, which group are you going to follow? Right. Why not follow group 2? But what if it's somebody you love a whole bunch that's in group 2? You're right, because they're not going to be with you when you stand before God and figure out whether you live or die. That's exactly right. It doesn't matter. And if we don't understand this and make it very clear in our own hearts and minds, with our whole heart and our whole soul, make this commitment to God, we have no hope ourselves. That's an important message to learn. So we can make the right choice and to know there's only one God. He is easy to know, easy to hear from. It's not difficult to know how to follow Him. We just have to be deliberate and purposeful to follow Him. And if we're not, we won't make it. Verse 34. Or did God ever try to go and take for Himself a nation from the midst of other nations by trials, by signs, by wonders, by war, by mighty hand and outstretched arm, and by great terrors according to all that Jehovah your God did for you in Egypt before your eyes? That to you it was shown that you might know that Jehovah Himself is God and there is none other besides Him. Out of heaven He let you hear His voice, that He might instruct you. On earth He showed you His great fire, and you heard His words out of the midst of the fire. And because He loved your fathers, therefore He chose their descendants or offspring or children or progeny. He chose their descendants after them. And He brought you out of Egypt with His presence, with His mighty power, driving out from before you nations greater and mightier than you, to bring you in, to give you their land as an inheritance, as it is this day. Therefore know this day and consider it in your heart, that Jehovah Himself is God in heaven above, and on the earth beneath, there is no other. To that I say, praise the Lord, because now it makes it much easier on me. You shall therefore keep His statutes and His commandments, which I command you today, no matter who contradicts Him, that it may go well with you and with your children after you, that you may prolong your days in the land which Jehovah your God is giving you for all time. Then Moses set apart 3 cities on this side of the Jordan, toward the rising of the sun, that the manslayer might flee there, who kills his neighbor unintentionally, without having hated him in time past, and that by fleeing to one of these cities he might live. Bezer in the wilderness of the plateau of the Reubenites, Ramoth and Gilead of the Gadites, and Golan and Bashan for the Manassites. and that's where we will conclude. And so as we go forward, the way we know who to listen to and who to follow is we have to know God. We have to have already predetermined to have turned to Him and want to listen to Him and do His will, because we are incredibly grateful that He is merciful and has rescued us from a position of being dead and lost, and that He's giving us the opportunity of mercy and life as a result of the great work that He's done and our response to Him in His work. Being totally committed to Him. And if we do that part on our side, we can guarantee He's going to do the part on His side, and there's no wonder what will ultimately happen with us. Along the way, however, there may be years of challenge of watching other people make the opposite decision, and we watch them perish. We may have to go through circumstances of our enemies confronting us, where we have to defend ourselves against that confrontation. We may even have to be a part of a war in the Lord's army to conquer the enemy and wipe them out so that we cannot be infected by that enemy. These are all realities of life. And if we are faithful to remain wholly committed with our whole heart and all our soul, God says, I'm going to take really good care of you. You're going to live. You're going to persevere. I'm going to bless you. That's His promise. And it will never, ever change. It can't. Because for the Word of God to change, then God Himself would change. And the one reason it's so great to know that there's only one God and we can trust Him is because He's not arbitrary. He's constant. If He changed, we would never be able to know Him. If He was fickle, we could never get close to Him. It wouldn't be possible. Howie, you're a kind of a science fan. You like a lot of things science. Do you know that science is only possible because there is order in the world? If things were unpredictable in the world, how much science could you do? And the answer is 0. Because if things were unpredictable, if today your dog gave birth to a hamster, okay, if your science said dogs now give birth to hamsters, but tomorrow your dog gives birth to a parakeet, what good is your science? 0. You see, only because it's predictable and orderly does science even work. Is it even possible? Because without that predictability and that order, there is no such thing as science. It's impossible. And the only way that predictability and that order exists is because God is so orderly and so constant. That's one of the things that makes it so great that there's only one God. Nobody's going to come and change the order. Nobody's going to be able to alter the predictability. There's only one God. I know whatever the order is today, it's going to be there tomorrow. And the next day. That's why science works. Without that knowledge, science is impossible. So you as a science fan would say, I'm glad there's only one God and I can know Him, because that makes it so I can do science. Because without Him, there is no such thing as science. Thank you for joining us today on our YouTube channel, XL for Christ. We hope you like and even subscribe to our YouTube channel for ongoing edification that you can gain from listening to the messages and hopefully diving further into the Word of God to find out His truth. We also like you to visit our website at xlforchrist.org. This website talks about the discipleship process that we engage in with folks to help them grow in Christ. We hope you will join us in our endeavor to make disciples for the glory of God.